There's a peculiar kind of clarity that comes from being blindsided by betrayal. It's like standing in a snowstorm, cold, biting, and overwhelming at first, but then you realize you can see farther than ever before. My name's David, and this is the story of how my wife, Vanessa, thought she could outwit me. Spoiler alert, she didn't. Vanessa and I met during our junior year of college at a small liberal arts school in upstate New York. She was magnetic. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and have every guy second-guess his current relationship. I wasn't the most athletic or the best-looking guy around, but I was sharp, and sharp can get you farther than you'd think. My humor broke through her defenses. By the end of the year, she was laughing at my dumb jokes and stealing fries off my plate. Fast forward 15 years, and we'd built what looked like a dream life. We ran a modest accounting firm together in Pittsburgh, catered to small businesses, and raised 2 kids, Ethan and Lily. If you told me 6 months ago that the woman I called my soulmate had been sneaking around behind my back, I'd have laughed in your face. But here's the thing, Vanessa underestimated me. She mistook my quiet demeanor for weakness and my trust for blindness. Big mistake. It started innocently enough, or as innocently as betrayal can start. Vanessa's late nights during tax season weren't unusual, but this year, they became excessive. She'd come home with damp hair, claiming she'd taken a shower at the gym after a particularly tough session. Odd, considering she hated gyms and hadn't lifted a dumbbell in years. The first red flag. One night, I logged into her shared calendar to check if she'd scheduled a meeting with a potential new client. Instead, I found a recurring event labeled personal time every Thursday evening. Curious, I borrowed a friend's car the next Thursday and parked near her supposed client's office. She wasn't there. So I followed her to where her phone's geolocation showed, an upscale townhouse on the south side of town. The place was pristine, with one of those expensive stainless steel mailboxes. I saw a man with salt and pepper hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a Viagra commercial open the door. He kissed her. My blood froze in my veins. That night, Vanessa came home, her hair damp as usual. I didn't say a word. It wasn't time yet. I needed details for my revenge. So over the next few weeks, I shadowed her carefully, gathering receipts, phone records, and photos. I pieced together the puzzle. Her lover, Edward, because of course his name would be Edward, was a 50-something entrepreneur whose real talent seemed to be dodging child support payments and talking women into bed. There's an art to revenge. You can't just lash out. No, it has to be surgical, precise, and most importantly, it has to sting. So, I got to work. I also spent those few weeks devising a plan that would make Vanessa and her silver-haired Casanova flinch in surprise. The key wasn't just to end things. I wanted them to feel the fallout. Every betrayal deserves consequences, after all. First, I secured my financial position. I drained my personal savings and rerouted the funds into a trust for Ethan and Lily's college education. Next, I updated my life insurance policy, removing Vanessa as the beneficiary and replacing her with my sister, who would ensure the kids were taken care of. I changed the passwords on our joint accounts and started quietly moving half our shared funds into a private account under my name. As an accountant, I knew how to make things disappear without raising alarms. Vanessa might have been clever enough to keep an affair under wraps, but she was no match for years of professional experience in forensic accounting. Now, about the house. We owned a spacious suburban home with just enough equity to make things tricky in a divorce. So I planted the seed, a move back into the city. It's better for the kids, I said over dinner one night. Ethan can walk to his high school instead of taking the bus, and Lily will love having parks nearby. Plus, we'll be closer to our clients. Vanessa didn't need much convincing. I knew the real reason she agreed. Edward's townhouse was just a few blocks from the area I proposed. She probably thought she'd struck gold, easy access to her lover under the guise of family convenience. We sold the suburban house, barely breaking even, and upgraded to a more expensive property in the heart of the city. The mortgage left us with little equity, which was precisely the point. By the time Vanessa realized what was happening, the house would be more liability than asset. April 15th, the end of tax season, was always our busiest time of year. We'd work late into the night for weeks, and once the chaos subsided, we'd plan a weekend getaway to recharge. This year, however, Vanessa had a different idea. "David," she said, her tone serious as she sat across from me in the living room, "I need to talk to you." Oh, this was going to be good. "Go ahead," I replied, keeping my face neutral. "I need some time alone," she began, clearly rehearsing this speech in her head. "I've never really had the chance to be by myself. I went straight from living with my parents to being married. I just need a break to figure things out." I leaned back, feigning confusion. "What are you trying to say, Vanessa?" She hesitated. "There's someone else. I haven't done anything yet, but I need to spend time with him to see how I feel." She had the gall to look me in the eye as she said it, as if expecting some understanding. I couldn't hold back the smirk that spread across my face. "Let me get this straight. You want to go on a test drive with this guy while I stay here and babysit the kids?" Her face hardened. "It's not like that, David. I just need space." "Sure," I said with as much sarcasm as I could muster. "You take your little vacation with your boyfriend, and I'll just wait around to see if you decide I'm worth keeping." Vanessa started to protest, but I cut her off. "No need to decide, Vanessa. I've made it easy for you. You've got a lover? Fine. I'm filing for divorce." She blinked, stunned. "I don't want a divorce. I just need some time away." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, my voice dripping with venom. "You made your choice the second you thought I'd let this slide. Go ahead. Spend your week with Edward. Let's see how that works out for you." I packed a bag that night, kissed Ethan and Lily goodbye, and left Vanessa to her fantasy. I wasn't really going anywhere, just to a rented cabin a few hours away, but she didn't need to know that. I wanted her to stew, to see just how well her dream lover handled reality. From my car, parked a block away, I waited to see how things unfolded. Sure enough, less than an hour later, Edward's silver Lexus pulled up to the house. Vanessa rushed out to greet him, but their reunion was cut short when Ethan, Lily, and their endless energy barreled out the front door. Edward's face twisted into something between shock and horror as he realized his week of romance came with a side of childcare. It didn't take long for the shouting to start. I couldn't hear the words, but the gestures were loud enough. Edward got back in his car and sped off, leaving Vanessa standing in the driveway with two very confused kids. I laughed all the way to the cabin. After a week of solitude at the cabin, I returned home refreshed and ready to take the next steps. I wasn't just going to leave Vanessa in shambles. I was going to make sure she stayed there for a good long while. When I pulled into the driveway, the sight that greeted me was almost poetic. A disheveled Vanessa trying to wrangle Ethan and Lily, who both looked like they'd staged a mutiny. The house was a disaster. Dishes piled up in the sink, unopened mail scattered across the counter, and the faint smell of something burnt wafting from the kitchen. The cherry on top. Vanessa's tear-streaked face and a defeated look that told me her little escapade with Edward hadn't gone as planned. I strolled into the living room, tossed my bag onto the couch, and called Ethan over for a hug. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and he was clutching a bowl of cereal, clearly his go-to meal for the week. "Miss me, buddy?" I asked, ruffling his hair. He nodded. "Mom wouldn't let us order pizza," he whispered, as though divulging a state secret. I glanced at Vanessa, who was slumped in the armchair. "So," I said, my voice light but edged with steel, "how was your time with Edward?" She looked up at me, startled. "How do you know his name?" "Oh, Vanessa," I said, smirking. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? I know everything. And just so you're clear, I had a lovely chat with your silver-haired Casanova." Her face turned pale. What did you say to him?" "Nothing much. Just made sure he understood that if he so much as answered your texts, he'd be dealing with some rather unpleasant acquaintances of mine." I leaned in, dropping my voice to a whisper. "He blocked you, didn't he?" Her eyes welled up, and I knew I'd hit the mark. I pulled out her phone from the coffee table, scrolled to Edward's contact, and called. A robotic voice informed me the number had been blocked. I chuckled, holding the phone up for her to hear. "Looks like your test drive ended in a spectacular crash," I said, my tone mocking. Vanessa broke down sobbing, pleading with me. "David, I'm sorry. I didn't love him, it was just a stupid mistake. You're the only one I've ever loved. I let out a sharp laugh. Spare me. If you really loved me, you wouldn't have spent God knows how long sneaking around with Edward while I was here taking care of everything. I'll do anything to fix this, she whimpered, her voice trembling. I tilted my head, feigning consideration. How about this? Don't fight me on the divorce. The next morning, I met with my lawyer to finalize the papers. Pennsylvania's divorce laws were my secret weapon. Since I had undeniable proof of her adultery, photos, phone records, and Edward's own admission, I wouldn't owe her a dime of alimony. Not one red cent. When Vanessa was served the papers, the real fireworks began. She stormed into my office, waving them in the air like a white flag she hadn't quite figured out how to surrender with. You can't do this to me, she hissed, her voice low enough not to alert my staff. I'll take you to court, I'll take everything. I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. Go ahead. But just so we're clear, the house is under my name, I have full custody of the kids, and Pennsylvania courts don't look kindly on cheating spouses. So really, Vanessa, what do you have to bargain with? Her eyes darted around, searching for a foothold. Finding none, she slumped into the chair across from me. I made a mistake, she said, her voice soft. Don't punish me for the rest of my life. Oh, Vanessa, I said, leaning forward. You don't get it, do you? This isn't punishment. It's consequences. The divorce finalized quickly, thanks to her begrudging cooperation. I kept the house until Ethan and Lily turned 18, at which point we'd sell it and split the proceeds. More importantly, I gained full custody of the kids, with Vanessa relegated to bi-weekly visits. The court even granted me child support payments, which I treated like a monthly badge of victory. As for Vanessa, her lover never resurfaced, but his absence didn't stop her spiral. A few months after the divorce, I heard she'd hit a small lottery jackpot, $80,000. Good for her, I thought. She deserved a win after losing everything else. Unfortunately for Vanessa, her taste in men hadn't improved. Her new boyfriend was a gym rat half her age who burned through her winnings faster than you can say bad decisions. By the time he ghosted her, she was left broke and humiliated. Life for me and the kids turned out pretty great. Ethan thrived at Penn State, and Lily found her groove in middle school, with more confidence and independence than I'd ever expected. I, meanwhile, shed a few pounds, mostly from learning how to cook badly, and cycling around the city. We spent weekends exploring museums, hiking trails, and generally making the kind of memories that didn't involve betrayal or heartbreak. Every now and then, Vanessa would call to complain about her situation, but I'd keep the conversations short. After all, I had a new life to focus on, one that didn't include cleaning up her messes. Some might say revenge isn't the answer. I disagree. Sometimes, it's the perfect way to make sure the guilty parties understand exactly what they've lost.